Sometimes you only realize how good the time was once it is gone. I guess I can say the same for my life until I turned 6. I was a normal, happy kid with a loving father and mother who got to go for ice cream every Wednesday and had a twin sister, Ava, as my best friend, who I could never be separated from. Or so I thought. It didn't take long for me to understand that nothing in life is permanent. The first time I learned that was when I was separated from my twin at the age of 6, when our parents decided that they could no longer tolerate each other. Mom got Ava, and I stayed with Dad. It wasn't ideal, but it worked. I was naturally sad, but life was still good. I wish I had realized just how much I was going to miss that time, and had spent it well, rather than moping around for my mother and twin. At first, my twin and I were connected. We'd get to talk to each other on the phone, and Dad still took us both for ice cream every Wednesday. But slowly, things changed, and before I knew it, we only started talking to each other on special occasions, and even then it just wouldn't feel the same. As if struggling through the idea of accepting that I may have lost my twin sister to distance wasn't enough, life gave me another loss. My father was taken away from me at the age of 11. It was a huge blow for me, as if my world had turned upside down. However, through it all, I was hopeful for one thing. I'll be going back to my mother and my sister, and I'll have my best friend back. I was a kid back then, and the idea of having my friend back was good enough to console me. However, I was very wrong. I had lost my mother and sister way back, and the people I was going to live with were no different from strangers in familiar skin. It quickly became clear that my mom only saw me as an additional burden, financially and physically. On the very first day, I moved in with them. Ava, on the other hand, was spoiled and entitled, thinking she was better than me. Not only did I not receive the love I was expecting, but I was also treated badly and forced to do all the work while Ava lazed around. I remember my first day in the new house vividly. I was still grieving for Dad, but Mom didn't seem to care. She told me to unpack my things and clean up the living room as soon as I arrived. I was exhausted and sad, but I didn't dare argue. Ava was sitting on the couch, watching TV and eating snacks. When I asked her if she could help, she just laughed and ignored me. I thought it was a joke, but it quickly became clear that she was serious. From that day on, I was responsible for all the household chores. Cooking, cleaning, laundry. You name it, I did it. Ava would make a mess and then call me to clean it up. If I didn't do it right away, she'd complain to Mom, who would scold me for being lazy. One of the worst instances was when I was 14. It was the night of our birthday party. Mom had gone all out, buying Ava a new dress, a cake, and even hiring a DJ. I had stopped expecting anything for me because of how I spent my last 3 birthdays, but I still somewhat expected human decency. I remember spending the entire day cleaning the house and setting up decorations. Just as I finished, I realized I hadn't had time to do my homework. I asked Mom if I could skip the party to finish my assignments, but she snapped at me and made it clear that it wasn't an option. Reluctantly, I joined the party, but I felt out of place. Ava's friends were all over, and they treated me like a servant. They'd spill drinks on purpose and then laugh as I scrambled to clean up. At one point, Ava accidentally dropped her entire plate of food on the floor. I could feel the tears welling up, but I held them back and did as I was told. Not only did no one wish me a happy birthday, I was treated like trash on the very same day. After the party, I was exhausted, but I still had to finish my homework. I stayed up all night working on it. The next day at school, I could barely keep my eyes open. I ended up failing the assignment because I was too tired to do it properly. When I got home, marala home with my failed paper, Mom didn't even ask how my day was. Instead, she handed me a list of chores to do before dinner. It wasn't just the physical labor that I had to endure. The emotional neglect was just as bad. Mom never missed an opportunity to remind me that I was a burden. She'd often talk about how hard it was to raise 2 children on her own and how much she had sacrificed for me. Grateful? For what? for being treated like a servant in my own home. Ava, on the other hand, got everything she wanted. She got new clothes, gadgets, and even a car when she turned 16. I got hand-me-downs and had to work part-time jobs to save up for anything extra. When I finally saved enough to buy myself a used laptop for school, Ava threw a fit. Mom sided with her, of course, telling me I needed to share because it was only fair. So I barely got to use the laptop I paid for with my own money. One winter, I remember coming down with a terrible flu. I was bedridden for days, shivering with a fever. I asked Mom if she could take me to the doctor, but she brushed me off, saying it was just the flu, and I'd be fine. I had to take care of myself, dragging myself out of bed to get water and medicine. Ava, meanwhile, didn't lift a finger to help. She even invited friends over, and they were playing loud music while I was trying to rest. Then there was the time when I was 17, just a year before I could finally graduate and leave for college. I had been working late at my part-time job trying to save enough money for tuition and living expenses. One night, I came home exhausted, only to find the house in a complete mess. Ava had thrown a party, and there were empty bottles and trash everywhere. Mom was out of town, so it fell on me to clean it all up. Ava didn't even apologize. She thought I was being a buzzkill when I expressed my exhaustion and frustration. The next morning, I had to go to work early, having barely slept. My boss noticed I was tired and made a snide remark about how I should manage my time better. I wanted to scream and tell him everything, but I just nodded and got on with my work. That's how it always was, bottling up my feelings, pretending everything was fine, even when it wasn't. I guess this is enough to give you a basic idea of my life. Many of you must be thinking that I might have left the house as soon as I turned 18 and ran away from that horrible place. Sorry to disappoint you guys, but I didn't. I'm 22 now, and I'm still living with my mother and twin. Not because I need to, but because I know no other way of living. When you have lived a certain way all your life, it becomes your new normal, and anything else, no matter how good, just doesn't feel right. You could say that I was suffering from something similar. My mother never asked me to move out either. I guess she loved to remind me how big of a burden I am to her, a little too much to ever ask me to leave. Now, let me come to the reason. I'm here on the internet telling my life story to strangers. As I mentioned earlier, I have never really thought about leaving the house. Well, that's not entirely true. Lately, I have been thinking about it, and I have been thinking about it a lot. Actually, I want to be a cosmetologist, and there's this institute that offers courses for just that. It's my dream. The institute is out of state, and the course is a bit expensive, but I managed to save enough by working multiple jobs, even giving a share of my earnings to Mom each month out of a sense of obligation. However, before I could break it to my mother, my sister gave us shocking news. A week ago, Ava announced she was pregnant and planning her wedding. Everything aside, this was huge news. Of course, I was happy for my sister and wished her the best. That was until yesterday. Let me explain to you why. Yesterday, my sister's fiancé, who for some reason seemed oddly familiar, came to our house with his parents to discuss the wedding arrangements. Everything was going great until my mom turned to me and said I needed to help pay for the wedding. I was stunned and didn't say anything in front of the guests. However, when I confronted her after the guests left, she nonchalantly reminded me of all the sacrifices they had made for me, and the huge financial burden I was on her at the age of 11. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I could, considering that's what she constantly reminds me of every day. But how can she expect me to pay for her daughter's wedding just because she took me in? Has she actually forgotten over the years that she gave birth to me too? And what a burden. How did I take care of the household and start helping with the finances as soon as I turned 16? However, I know that once my mother had thought of it, she would do everything in her power to make sure I paid for my sister's wedding. The question is, does she already know that I have enough savings to fund it? If yes, how? It seems like I have no choice but to give up my savings, putting my dreams on hold once again. Or maybe, for once, I should just quit being the only one burdened with the weight of keeping the relationship going and go for my dream. Can I even do it? What do you guys think? Please let me know your opinions and suggestions, if any. Update 1. Hello everyone. I can't even thank you all for so much support and kindness. I never expected such high engagement on my post. I received so many suggestions and advice on how I should, for once in my life, put myself first. I agree, but I guess I'll keep this in mind for next time when I'm in a similar situation. I'm so sorry in advance to disappoint you guys, but I have agreed to pay for my sister's wedding. It wasn't my ideal choice, but I wasn't left much to choose from. Let me resume from where I left off. The last time I updated, about 2 weeks ago, when Mom asked me to pay for Ava's wedding, I felt my stomach sink. I wanted to say no and explain that I had saved that money for my dream course, but I couldn't find the words. Mom had a way of guilt-tripping me, reminding me of all she sacrificed for me and how she took me in after Dad died, though it was more duty than love. She insisted I owed the family to help with Ava's wedding, especially since Ava was pregnant and needed support. Mom listed all the expenses she had because of me, saying paying for the wedding was the least I could do. Whenever I brought up my dreams, Mom dismissed them, calling me selfish and emphasizing her own hardships. At one point, she got really dramatic and pulled out old photo albums. She flipped through pictures of me as a kid and pointed out all the times she was there for me. Even though it was hilarious, in an album full of photographs, she could barely find 2-3 pictures of me. Yet it was overwhelming, and it chipped away at my resolve. She even played the sympathy card, talking about her age and wanting to see Ava settled before anything happened to her. The emotional pressure was relentless, and I eventually gave in, feeling guilty and defeated. Anyway, this is not why I'm here. I learned something yesterday and thought you guys should know. Here it goes. Remember how I mentioned my sister's fiancé felt a bit familiar, like I knew him from somewhere? Well, I was right. It turns out he was my best friend's boyfriend, actually an ex-boyfriend now. Yesterday, after a long day at work, I visited my best friend Emily to escape the wedding stress at home. Emily and I have been friends since middle school, and she knew all about my difficult family situation. As we chatted, Emily saw Ava's engagement announcement online and asked about the groom, Jake. When I showed her a picture of Jake, her eyes widened in shock. When I asked her what was wrong, she had tears in her eyes and said that even though the name struck her as odd, she didn't actually think that her ex-boyfriend was getting married to my sister. Ex-boyfriend? I was really shocked and asked her to explain herself. Emily explained that Jake was her ex-boyfriend. They both were good friends, but since he was already with someone else, my sister Ava, they just remained good friends. She liked him a lot, and she was sure that he liked her too. This was until he broke up with his girlfriend, as he didn't really like her, and he didn't think she really liked him either, based on how she treated him. So they had just started dating about 2 months ago, and it was like a dream. But they had to break up soon after. My heart sank as she explained how devastated she had been when they split. She had genuinely believed that Jake was the one. Emily continued, telling me that according to Jake, he only dated Ava briefly, and she was not an easy ex to deal with, and made multiple scenes even long after the breakup. She was just not ready to accept that they had broken up. The situation was messier than I could have imagined. To be honest, that does sound like my sister. Then, about a month ago, Ava dropped the news of her pregnancy on Jake. Given his conventional family's strict values, Jake felt pressured to do the right thing and marry Ava. As Emily spoke, I could see the hurt in her eyes, and it broke my heart to see my best friend in so much pain. To be honest, I came to see my friend hoping to get a little away from the whole sister wedding drama, but ended up getting even more sucked into it. Now, not only am I sacrificing my dreams, but I'm also paying for the very wedding that is going to break my best friend's heart even more. I just want this nightmare to be over. Though I don't think I'll have anything more to update after this. I'll probably keep coming back to this post till the wedding is over because this honestly is the only place where I can vent and the only thing keeping me sane. Update 2. Hello everyone, I know I said that I wouldn't have much to update, and no, I haven't come back to just rant about how unfair life is to me, as according to many of you in the comments, I tend to rant a lot. No, I'm here to tell you something very suspicious. Let me get straight into it. The very next day of when I last updated, which was about 3 months ago after work, I decided to take a walk around to clear my head of all the mess I had recently learned. As I strolled past a trendy bar, I spotted Ava through the window. She was sitting with a group of friends, laughing and holding a cocktail. My heart skipped a beat. Ava was supposed to be pregnant. Why was she out here drinking? I mean, of course, none of her friends knew she was pregnant since Jake's family wanted to keep it a secret to avoid any shame and had strictly forbidden her to tell anyone apart from her family. But she knew very well that she wasn't supposed to be drinking. How could she be so careless? The next day, when Ava mentioned her upcoming doctor's appointment, I offered to go with her. I told her it was important for me to support her and the baby, but she immediately started making excuses. She said the appointments were routine and boring and that I didn't need to waste my time. She even tried to convince me that the doctor's office had strict rules about visitors. Her excuses didn't make sense, and I could feel my suspicion growing. Something wasn't right. I know this had nothing to do with me, but for some reason I couldn't let things go. So, I ended up following Ava to her checkup. I kept a safe distance as she left the house and got into her car. My heart pounded as I tailed her, hoping I was wrong. But instead of heading to the hospital, Ava drove to a shopping mall. I watched in disbelief as she parked and walked into a boutique. There was no doctor's appointment, she was just shopping. I needed to be sure, so I followed her again on her next supposed doctor's visit, which was in a month's time. This time, she drove to a coffee shop, met up with a friend, and spent the afternoon chatting and sipping lattes. My stomach churned with a mix of anger and betrayal. She was lying about everything. Still trying not to jump to a conclusion very soon, I waited for another month just to be sure and followed her once again. To my utter disappointment this time too, she went everywhere but to the doctor's. I still don't want to jump to conclusions, but now I'm very confused as to what is going on. I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm wondering if she is even really pregnant. Should I confront her? Should I even do something? If yes, what? Update 3. Hello everyone, it's been over 6 months since I last updated, and a lot has happened. I'm sorry I couldn't update earlier, but I was just so busy moving. Yes, moving. I'm writing this from the dorm room of my dream university. Yes, I did it. Trust me, it feels no less than a dream to me too. How I got here now. That's the messy part. Let me resume from where I left off. I had suspicions about my sister's pregnancy, due to which I started following her on her visits to the doctor. Each time she never actually went to the hospital. She'd go somewhere else entirely and then return home as if nothing was amiss. I knew something was definitely wrong and I had to confirm my suspicions, so I decided to confront her doctor. It felt like a long shot, but I couldn't let Ava's lies continue. I went to the clinic and managed to get a meeting with Dr. Walters. I was nervous. You can't really ask the doctor about someone's pregnancy or question his integrity. So I decided to bluff him. I know it was stupid and it could have backfired, but I was desperate. So I sat down and told him that I knew about the deal he made with Ava, and that if he didn't come clean, I would report him to the authorities and make sure his medical license was revoked. To my surprise, he looked genuinely terrified. After a few moments of denial, he finally broke down and confessed. Ava had paid him to create fake pregnancy reports. She was never pregnant. He also revealed that Ava planned to fake a miscarriage a few months after the wedding to cover her tracks. Hearing this, I felt a mix of anger, shock, and relief. At least now I had the truth. I immediately contacted my best friend Emily and told her everything. She was stunned and heartbroken. Emily had been through so much with Jake, and now she learned that Ava had manipulated him into this sham of a marriage. Emily broke down in tears, devastated by the news. She couldn't believe the extent of Ava's deceit. I knew I had to do something. There was no way I was going to let my sister ruin my best friend's life like she had mine. We decided to team up with Jake to expose Ava and put an end to her lies. We knew it would be risky, but it was the only way to ensure that Ava's deceit would be exposed publicly and irreversibly. We planned to go through with the wedding preparations as usual, keeping everything under wraps until the right moment. I continued helping with the wedding arrangements, pretending everything was normal. Ava seemed oblivious to my suspicions, and my mom, completely taken in by Ava's act, constantly reminded me how important this wedding was for the family. Finally, the day of the wedding arrived, and a beautiful ceremony took place between the groom and the veiled bride. As the ceremony approached its end, a commotion broke out at the back of the hall. Ava came running down the aisle, screaming at the top of her lungs. She looked disheveled and furious. She came screamingly inquiring who locked her in her room and who was in her place. The guests gasped and turned to see what was happening. Despite the chaos, Jake didn't stop. He lifted the veil of the bride, standing beside him, revealing Emily, and without any hesitation, he kissed her, sealing their commitment to each other. Ava was absolutely livid. She tried to charge at Emily, but I stepped in and stopped her. I stood my ground and spilled the beans about Ava's fake pregnancy and her plan to fake a miscarriage after the wedding. The guests were shocked, whispering among themselves. I brought Dr. Walters up front, and he confirmed everything, detailing how Ava had manipulated him into creating false reports. With the truth out in the open, Ava's anger turned to panic. She started pleading and crying, but it was too late. The guests were appalled, and Jake's parents were furious. Mom, who was initially stunned into silence, tried to lash out at me, calling me a liar and a traitor. But I stood firm, telling her that I was done being her pawn and that she was no longer my mother. I cut her off completely, freeing myself from years of emotional manipulation and abuse. It's been 5 months since that day. A lot has changed since. Emily and Jake were able to start fresh, free from Ava's deceit. I finally had the chance to pursue my dream course since Jake and Emily returned all the money I spent on the wedding preparations. As for Ava, as the news about the wedding day spread, Ava's friends turned against her and she became a laughing stock. Her reputation was ruined, and she found herself isolated and alone. The reality of her actions hit her hard, and she spiraled into depression, holed up in the house she once oppressed me in. This is it for my story. Thank you so much for all your kindness and support throughout the journey. Bye. Comments. Pink Paradise. 11. Wow, what an incredible update. I'm so proud of you for standing up for yourself and uncovering the truth about Ava's lies. It must have taken a lot of courage to confront the doctor and expose the fake pregnancy. You not only saved Jake and Emily from a disastrous marriage, but you also freed yourself from a toxic environment. Moving to your dream university is such an amazing step forward for you. You deserve every bit of happiness and success that comes your way. I wish you all the best in your studies and your future endeavors. You've got this. King of Wano. Honestly, I can't believe you went through all that drama. It sounds like you made a huge spectacle out of Ava's wedding day. Yeah, she was wrong for lying, but airing all that dirty laundry in public, that's just cruel. And how convenient it is that you end up as the hero while your sister is left to spiral into depression. Maybe if you hadn't been so eager to expose her, things could have been handled more privately. You come across as self-righteous. acting like you're above everyone else. Ava might have been deceitful, but you went out of your way to humiliate her in front of everyone. That's not bravery, it's pettiness. I hope you enjoy your new life, but don't forget that karma has a way of coming back around.